what does it truly mean for a game console or a piece of hardware to be next generation? Most people would say that it's how much better graphics and sound is there than the previous generation that it's replacing. I want to make the argument that that's a real wrong way of looking at this. So let's go back to the NES. And it starts selling like hotcakes. And Super Mario Brothers was kind of the driving force behind that for a good long while. During development of Super Mario Brothers 3, Shigeru Miyamoto has this idea that Mario should ride a dinosaur or some other animal. I don't actually know that the idea was a dinosaur specifically, but that was kind of the idea. And the NES couldn't handle it. And so the idea was put on hold for when a new system would come out and be able to handle it. And that new system was eventually the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Mario riding his dinosaur friend Yoshi became kind of a big selling point of the game. In fact, it's on the cover art for the cartridge. So Miyamoto's focus wasn't on the fact that the graphics are better, and the graphics are clearly better on the Super Nintendo than they are on the original Nintendo, but that wasn't the reason for advancing the technology. The reason for advancing the technology was they had run out of things to do on the NES that the NES could handle. And you see that again with the N64. Nintendo starts dabbling in 3D graphics with Donkey Kong Country and Super Mario RPG, and they used pre-rendered 3D graphics to create the visual style of both of those games. Now, it's fair to note that Nintendo themselves didn't actually develop these games. Other companies did, Rare with Donkey Kong Country and Squaresoft with Super Mario RPG. But the fact remains that people were interested in doing this. Even Star Fox wasn't developed internally at Nintendo. It was developed by a UK studio known as Argonaut. And how they made the Super Nintendo accomplish what Star Fox was able to do was by putting an FX chip inside of the Star Fox cartridge. And so it was clear that in order to be able to make that next leap, Nintendo needed a more powerful console. And so the N64 comes out. And now we have completely 3D rendered environments with Super Mario 64. In order to be able to do Super Mario 64, more powerful hardware was required. In order to be able to do Mario Kart 64, and you'll remember, in Super Mario Kart, there weren't hills. Everything was flat. And in Mario Kart 64, they were able to add inclines and stuff. Star Fox 64 added a whole lot of new techniques with things that they were able to do. From the N64 to the GameCube, we see a big graphical leap, but we do start to see that a lot of the things that developers are wanting to do were kind of already possible on the N64. You couldn't do them as well. It didn't run real good. You'll remember playing Perfect Dark. There's a multiplayer, one of the mission maps, where there's a whole bunch of the little Elvis aliens running around. And they've all got the little dart thing that has poison in it and makes your vision blurry and stuff. You play that 4 players and get in there, and the game drops to like single digit frame rate. So absolutely, more powerful hardware was needed, but we were getting to a point where, thanks to 3D graphics, things that developers wanted to do were already becoming possible. Now it was just a matter of getting hardware that was powerful enough to run it well. And that's not to say that the GameCube didn't absolutely do things that the N64 was just not capable of doing. I'm not trying to say that, but we were starting to see that kind of plateau. And the president of Nintendo at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, he even said that the GameCube, as far as he was concerned, was going to be the last console that Nintendo released. Because we were just getting to a point where more power wasn't doing that much to justify upgrading all this hardware. I think he was wrong, but not about that happening. I think he was wrong about that being the GameCube. The GameCube was not there. Switch over to the Xbox 360, and I'm having to jump from one console manufacturer to another because the Wii was not really that much more powerful than the GameCube. It was just a new way of playing games. But on the 360, the graphics significantly better than they are on the GameCube and the original Xbox, and particularly the PlayStation 2. Something that came out on the Xbox 360 that just wasn't possible on previous generations of hardware was Dead Rising. Dead Rising could generate, I believe it was 800 independently controlled zombies in that game. Now, to be fair, zombies are not that hard to create as far as artificial intelligence goes, that they don't have a whole lot of programming going into their behavior. It's mostly just wander around and wait for the character to get close to them and then attack them. Most of the time, especially in that game, the zombies aren't actively seeking after the character unless they're right there next to them. So generating the AI to be able to do that probably wasn't that difficult. I'm not a programmer. I don't know. So if you are somebody who develops games and you're watching this, I'm not trying to like crap on what it is you do. I'm just saying that, yeah, it was 800 characters on screen, but they weren't doing a whole lot. But that still wasn't possible on previous generations of hardware. And so here we have a somewhat new gameplay experience. I think you could argue that just having 800 mindless things on screen isn't really a new way of playing games, but certainly it was neat and something that, like I said, we couldn't do before the Xbox 360 came out. So even though, again, we've got a big graphical leap, what really made it next generation was new ways of designing and playing games that weren't possible on the previous generation. And then from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One, or from the PlayStation 3 to the PlayStation 4, all we really got was a jump in graphics. And it wasn't even that big of a jump in graphics. If you'll go look at The Last of Us for the PlayStation 3, and then look at the remake or the remaster or port or whatever it is they called it of The Last of Us for the PlayStation 4, the gains in graphical fidelity are not that much at all. Now, sure, it is a port of a PS3 game, but the PS3 version of that game looks so good. You don't really get that much of improvement in graphics on the PlayStation 4. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these next generation games, and we look at them, and yeah, a lot of people are super impressed by them. We look at the new Assassin's Creed games and the things that they're able to do with that Shadow of the Colossus remake, and just how much better it looked than previous games. But we're not really seeing new gameplay experiences anymore. We're just seeing, oh, well, the graphics are somewhat better. And I think for a lot of gamers, and I'm one of these people, I just kind of find myself wondering, like, why did I spend all that money on this PlayStation 4? I never played a game on my PS4 while I still had it that I could not have played on my PS3. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that I had never played a game on my PS4 that, had you dialed back the shadows and the lighting effects and things like that, would not have been possible on my PlayStation 3. I don't have a single game for my Xbox One that I'm not convinced, if you just dialed the graphics back a little bit, would have run just fine on my Xbox 360. And so that's why I think this idea that next generation is about new lighting techniques and all these shadows and actually ray tracing from Nvidia with these new graphics cards. I look at it and like, yeah, it's impressive, but is it delivering for me a new way of playing games? And the truth of the matter is, no. It's not. Am I saying that these improvements in hardware are unnecessary and that we should just be perfectly fine playing on our Xbox 360s for the rest of our lives? No, absolutely not. Hardware is going to improve. Hardware, whether I see any of these changes or not, hardware is going to change the way that game developers develop games. One thing that I noticed about the RTX graphics cards and the ray tracing is that developers have been having to fake a lot of things when it comes to reflections. And again, I'm not a game developer, but I've always kind of assumed that the way that they did that was if you go up to like the side of a building and it's all glass and you can see your reflection in it, you're not actually seeing a reflection of that generated character. What you're seeing is the developer has just rendered another version of you in that, and it's mimicking you or mirroring you rather, and so that's creating the effect of there's a reflection here. I do get that having this just happen due to ray tracing is going to change the way that developers develop games. I'm saying as a consumer, what is the benefit of me going and spending $1,000 on a new graphics card or spending $500 on a new Xbox if I'm not getting a new gameplay experience? And that's why I'm going to argue Nintendo has been right about this. They were a little hard-headed about things. Not having a jump in graphics going from the GameCube to the Wii, I think was a mistake. Now don't get me wrong, the Wii has amazing games. And the Wii has beautiful games. I still, to this day, believe if you were to hook up an Xbox 360 and run the prettiest game on it, let's say, well, let's not say the prettiest game because that's probably a Forza game, and that's definitely going for photorealism. Let's say something like Halo or Gears of War, and you run it at 480p and put that next to a Wii running Metroid Prime or Super Mario Galaxy, also at 480p. Honest opinion, Mario Galaxy probably looks better. Metroid probably looks better. I understand that how things look and how things are pleasing to the eye or not pleasing to the eye is 100% subjective, and you may completely disagree with me. But in my opinion, Mario Galaxy and Metroid Prime look better than Gears of War or Halo. It's not because, the polygon counts or anything like that. It's mostly art direction and the way that Nintendo used the hardware they had available to them to make a pleasant looking game. What made the Wii next generation was the way you played the game. A lot of people introduced silly things like waggle as just a way of replacing a button press in a game, and that wasn't really next gen. And yeah, Nintendo was guilty of that. Twilight Princess, all you were doing was flicking your wrist, and that was in replacement of hitting the A button. On Super Mario Galaxy, you're just flicking your wrist to attack, and that's really all that did. Wii Sports, on the other hand, that was a new way of playing that game. Skyward Sword is, no matter what your opinion of the game is itself, Skyward Sword's controls, that was a new way of playing Zelda. The Wii brought new gameplay experiences to the table that the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 really didn't. Yeah, again, I made the argument that Dead Rising wasn't possible on other systems, and pretty graphics do add to the gameplay experience. So, do I think that The Last of Us would have worked on the PlayStation 2? Maybe, but I don't think it would have quite had the impact that it had on the PS3 by being as realistic looking as it did. So yes, there is that argument. But then we go from the Wii to the Wii U. The Wii U was the first HD console that Nintendo launched, and it had that little screen thing. They were trying to like recreate the experience of the DS, I think, on the TV, and that's sort of what they were going for. But it did offer new ways of playing games. In fact, the Wii U was the only console where you had everything you need to make Evolve work on a single console. You could have had the monster on the Wii U gamepad, and then all of the hunters up there on the screen with Wii remotes or Pro controllers or whatever it is that you want to use. There's no reason in the world that that could not have happened, except that the developers of that game were like, we have certain graphic standard that we want to meet, and sure, okay, fine. Would the Wii U have been able to handle running Evolve as well as the Xbox One and the PS4 did? Absolutely not. But that gameplay experience was 100% possible on that system. And you only needed one system to be able to do it. This idea that that game did not come to the Wii U is just, to me, absurd because the developer was like, it has to look this good. And it doesn't really have to. Like, what if I don't care what it looks like? I just want to play the game. Again, not a software developer. Someone out there in the comment section is going to point out to me why I'm wrong. But I really think that, and Bethesda's proving this with the Switch right now. They're putting all these games on there that were meant for high-end hardware. They're working. Yeah, you're having to sacrifice your frame rate a little bit, and yeah, you're having to turn down some of the fancier graphics things like the shadows and the lighting and stuff like that. And maybe you're even having to limit the number of on-screen enemies, which I would argue that is changing the gameplay experience. But getting rid of a bunch of shadow, that's not changing the gameplay experience. There's no reason in the world that you can't dial your graphics back. We do it on PC all the time. I'm running a Radeon, something or other, and sure, since I'm running AMD, my computer gets really hot and ridiculous, but I run games that were designed to be on super high-end PCs on my 5-year-old potato computer, and I enjoy them. So why these games weren't coming to the Wii U, I don't know, but it's this idea that graphics are what make things next gen, and I think that's a wrong-headed way of thinking about it. And now we're on the Switch. Now the Switch is not offering quite the same gameplay experience difference that the Wii and the Wii U were offering, but it is giving me the opportunity to play home console quality games wherever I want to. In the bathroom, on the train on the way to work, which I realize this is not something that I have ever experienced because I don't live somewhere where that's necessary, but if you're the kind of person that takes an Uber or a taxi to work, or I can take it on trips with me, and if I'm in a hotel, I've got my Switch. Yeah, sure, it's not really changing the way that I play the game. 1-2 Switch was a fine demo for all the different things you can do with the Joy-Con. It is new, and it is different, and it is exciting, and I'm probably not even being fair to it because I've kind of forgotten about Labo, which is just amazing. And yeah, Labo, not possible with the hardware that is included with the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. Xbox was trying to do something truly next gen, in my mind, with Kinect. It didn't pan out quite the way that they wanted it to, and I think that's got a lot more to do with the way that Microsoft themselves used the Kinect. But they tried. And I understand that gamers don't necessarily want all these gimmicks. I'm talking about truly new and unique ways of playing games, like VR. VR is truly new and unique way of experiencing a game. It's got a long way to go, and yes, hardware improvements are going to be what makes VR better. I am not arguing that we should get rid of hardware improvements. I am not arguing that it's silly to go out and buy a new graphics card or that Nvidia should stop making them. I am arguing that measuring how much better a piece of hardware is by its graphics, by how much prettier it looks. I'm arguing that going and dropping $1,000 on a new GPU or $500 on a new game console simply because Laura's hair looks more like hair in this version than it does on that version is not how we should be measuring whether or not something is truly next gen. We should be looking at it from does this give me new ways of playing video games that I have not been able to experience before? Because that's the real catalyst for all this. Mario can't ride a dinosaur in this thing, so we're going to increase the hardware performance. Mario can't be in 3D on this thing, so we're going to increase the hardware performance. That's what we need to be doing. And so, yeah, I look at the RTX launch, I'm kind of underwhelmed. I'm glad that it's bringing graphics cards prices back down, because now I can go get a GTX 1070 or even a 1080 Ti for $500. And yeah, in my situation, I need new hardware. I can't run AAA games on medium settings at anything more than 25 frames per second, and that's something that I need to be able to do, especially if I'm going to be recording gameplay footage for this channel. Do I need all this ray tracing stuff? No, I don't. Is it going to change the gameplay experience? Not really. We need to be finding new and better and exciting ways of playing games and of experiencing games. Hollow Knight doesn't need a gimmick, but Hollow Knight also doesn't need a $1,000 GPU to work. Before you rush out and buy a new graphics card for your computer, or before you rush out and buy a new game console, and I guess with game consoles it's a little bit different, because if you want to play Halo 5, even though that game is totally possible on the Xbox 360 in my opinion, you can't play Halo 5 without an Xbox One. Also, if you want an Xbox One, don't get it for Halo 5. The game's not good. It's just not good. It's so bad. I just can't believe that that is a thing that exists. But it was just the first thing that popped up in my head. Yes, with console hardware, if you want to play the new stuff, you do have to upgrade, because developers are going to stop developing for the old thing. But PC gamers, you guys have it made. You don't have to go buy a new $1,000 graphics card to be able to play Battlefield 5. You can play it on what you're running probably right now, if you would just tone the graphics back a little bit. If you want to be on the cutting edge, go ahead. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. This really was about what we call next gen and what we don't call next gen. And I think what we call next gen really needs to be based more on, does this offer a new gameplay experience, and less on how pretty is that guy's beard. I just think that's a really weird that's a really weird measurement. If you dislike this video, give it a thumbs down. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get updated anytime there's a new video that comes out. Share this with your friends. Look me up on Twitter and all the other places that I am. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.